Brazil. If Brazil plays its cards right with its gamble on Russia and China, it could soon be the resource provider of a new world order led jointly by China and Russia, and superpower status will be its reward. To top that off, Brazil has an economy that is expected to grow to almost $10 trillion in the next 4 decades, putting it well ahead of Japan and Germany. Brazil also has massive reserves of natural resources as well as a population almost equal to the rest of South America combined. Taking all these signs into account, it's clear that Brazil could become the natural leader of South America by leveraging its influence over its smaller neighbors. Number 9. China. Napoleon once famously said that China is a sleeping giant. Let her sleep, for when she wakes, she will move the world. And today, what Napoleon said is quickly becoming a reality. As Western nations have become hopelessly addicted to China's goods, China has become the world's manufacturing hub, making China an obvious candidate for superpower status. China's location allows it to project their newfound power over both Central Asia as well as the population and resource-rich areas of North and Southeast Asia. China's crucial manufacturing base tethers the country to the global shipping lanes that stretch from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, granting China unparalleled control over these strategically important shipping lanes, which carry the lifeblood of the entire world economy. Some statisticians estimate that people with genius-level IQs occur only in 2% of all births. That means that China could have as many as 26 million geniuses among their 1.3 billion population, while the United States only has 6 million geniuses at its disposal within its population of 300 million people. China may have more brains as well as the brawn compared to the rest of the world, and can simply outthink its rivals. And on the military front, China has recently procured its first aircraft carrier. A Chinese carrier fleet means that for the first time, China may be able to move about the globe and conduct bombing campaigns against any third-tier power on the planet with impunity, as the United States has done in the past. As for the present, China is constructing artificial islands and preparing to annex disputed territory with the South China Sea. These moves are clear signs that China already sees itself as a regional superpower, with plans to expand well beyond their own region once they acquire these forward bases of operation. Number 8. Anybody watching the news over the past decade can tell that Russia has the mindset and the ambitions of a superpower. From using their exports of natural gas for political leverage over a dependent Europe to their annexation of the Crimea, Russia has shown that it is no longer a second-rate power. While Russia's military and resource base alone place among the greatest world powers, Russia will need to reverse the demographic decline and revamp its economy in order to survive the coming years. However, through shrewd diplomacy, President Putin has cultivated strong ties with China, which is not only a big win for him, but also a feat even the Soviet Union never managed to accomplish. Russia is also one of the famed BRICS nations, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together with these new allies, Russia is forming a new powerful economic consortium known as the New Development Bank that may finally grant Russia the weapon it needs to topple the US and European-dominated global markets. Russia and its BRICS allies under the New Development Bank will control more than 3 billion people, which is over 41% of the world's population. They also control more than a quarter of the world's land area and account for more than 25% of the world's GDP. If Russia's plans succeed, the NDB will allow them to build strong regional powers out of failed third world countries and guide them as faithful friends into Russia and China's sphere of influence, paving the way for their ascendance and eventual control over the entire world. Number 7. The European Union. If the European Union manages to survive the nationalist and Eurosceptic movements currently challenging it, the European Union is a prime candidate for superpower status in the very near future. The fact that a unified Europe could rise as a superpower with relative ease is well known to the strategists inside the Pentagon and explains the United States' never-ending involvement in Europe through organizations such as NATO. With the economy roughly similar in size to the US and an even larger population, the EU could centralize their political power in the future. These projections may not even be in the realm of speculation, because since the early 90s, the EU has sought to create their very own joint strike force known as the CSDP. And many analysts believe that this European force would be independent from the US-dominated NATO, meaning that the only obstacle for the EU becoming a superpower is a question of will and not a matter of ability. Number 6. Indonesia. Indonesia could see its strategic importance in Southeast Asia grow as tensions in the region heat up because of China's expansionist policies. The Indonesian archipelago forms a shield of islands between the Pacific and Indian Oceans, making it a powerful barrier nation between two major areas of the world. The superpowers of today are all aware of Indonesia's strategic location and may seek to ally with Indonesia and invest heavily in its development. Indonesia's economy has been growing at between 5 and 7% each year, and a Citibank report suggested that Indonesia has in the coming decades the potential to become the 4th largest economy in the world. Meanwhile, the military strength of Indonesia today is significant. Because Indonesia has grappled with insurgency, they have some of the most effective special forces units in the world. And the SEAL Team 6 raid to capture Osama bin Laden shows just how special forces are quickly becoming just as important as large standing armies. To top it off, Indonesia's government is currently acquiring state-of-the-art jet fighters and expanding the size of their surface fleet to over 200 ships. The real question for Indonesia's future leaders will be how to expand their own influence while balancing the needs of Washington and Beijing. Either way, Indonesia will have the power base to become a formidable global force in the future. Number 5. Germany. Germany has been called the engine of Europe because it controls Europe's largest economy and has worldwide fame from their high-quality goods. Germany has seen its influence, which is another word for power, increase dramatically in the post-Cold War and post-financial crisis Europe. Germany is currently putting its own national ambitions on the back burner. Instead, Germany is working towards furthering the project of European integration, which is a process that could see the EU assume great power status one day. If that day comes, a future EU superpower could very well have a strong Germany at the helm. Number 4. France. If a centralized European Union is rejected, as the National Front Party in France desires, France could very easily become a superpower even without the help of the EU. France, which once controlled a powerful empire that stretched across the globe, still maintains military bases in the Horn of Africa and the Persian Gulf, and they possess the world's 3rd largest nuclear arsenal. If France decides to take the leap and reclaim its seat among the world's greatest powers, the shell of its former colonial empire still exists and is waiting to be reclaimed. Vast regions of the world still predominantly speak French and are still run by French systems of government that once managed their colonies. If France were to reclaim part of their colonial empire, it may be easier the second time around, as they won't have to start from scratch. Number 3. Turkey. Meanwhile, Turkey is one of the biggest threats to Iranian dreams of becoming a leading player in the Middle East. Straddling both East and West, Turkey has over the past 2 decades demonstrated itself both willing and able to project power and influence to the south and to the east of their borders, often knocking head with Israel, Syria, and even Russia as a part of its foreign policies, derived from its imperial spirit from a proud Ottoman history. Another unique advantage Turkey enjoys is its control of the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which give life to the Middle East. The saying, "the Arabs have oil and we have water, let them drink their oil," nicely summarizes the potential leverage Turkey enjoys over its southern neighbors. And Turkey's economy has been booming since the early 2000s. Turkey was an empire at one point and could easily become one again, and even EU entry is possible for Turkey. Number 2. Iran. Barring a collapse of Iran through internal political tensions or Azeri separatism, Iran could leverage its political and religious connections across the region as it carves out for itself a role in a new Middle East. Currently, Iran is already forming an independent oil exchange that won't be tied to the US dollar, and they have already oriented their economy to be sanction-proof and nearly independent, meaning Iran's economy has become hardened and resilient by years of Western embargo and sanctions. Recently, President Obama has announced a plan to end the United States' long-standing dispute with Iran, and Obama's Iran deal may just give them the space they need to expand Iran's influence far and wide. Thanks to Iran's growing network of regional allies and client states, such as the Hazaras in Afghanistan, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia in Iraq and Saudi Arabia, as well as Hezbollah in Lebanon, and President Assad's Syria, Iran can turn up the heat up or down in the Middle East at will. Couple this with an enormous supply of oil reserves, Iran could easily grasp superpower status once it overcomes its international opposition. For example, Iran could choose to extend their influence into Afghanistan, or turn the Shia-dominated south of Iraq into a client state, or even just outright annex it. If Iran does incorporate South Iraq into its sphere of influence, the move would increase their access to the world's oil reserves to a point where they could even rival Saudi Arabia's. Iran also has ample sea bases for future naval operations, as well as a budding space program. Once Western nations finally decide that it is too costly to continue trying to keep Iran in check, Iran could almost instantaneously flourish and quickly become the China of the Middle East. And once Iran develops a stockpile of nuclear weapons, they will be as powerful as any other nuclear nation, as history has shown that nations with nuclear weapons are rarely, if ever, invaded. Number 1. India. Most analysts have accepted that India, the world's largest democracy with over 1.2 billion people, probably will become the dominant power in the Indian Ocean in the near future. India has all the ingredients for growth and influence, such as the world's third largest military force and an expanding navy that now has more aircraft carriers than even the United Kingdom. All of these impressive achievements have all been paid for by an economy that is projected to rival even China's in the coming decades, thanks to its younger workforce. Though there are many challenges ahead for India, such as crippling poverty, mass illiteracy, and corruption, and India will need to escape its precarious geopolitical situation as it is threatened by nuclear rival Pakistan to the west and could be challenged by Chinese expansion in the South China Sea. Regardless if India is to become a superpower, it will need a strong leader to finally crack down on and solve the internal problems it faces so it may expand beyond its borders.